Welcome to Bag Talk. It's Super Bowl Sunday, February 2nd, 2020. This episode of Bag Talk is brought to you by Pedialyte. It's Super Bowl Sunday. Awesome. I think it's going to be a great Super Bowl. I'm going to say that first of all. I think this is the best possible matchup that we could have had out of the four teams that were matched up. We're gonna go through the previews for both teams, go position by position, kind of see which team has the advantage where. The line right now, 4 hours before game time, it's Kansas City favored by 1.5. The over/under is 53.5. Start with the Kansas City offense, led obviously by Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. 4,000 yards this season, 26 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He had 2 rushing touchdowns. He has been incredible this year during the playoffs. 46 for 70, 8 touchdowns, no interceptions. 615 yards. He has 106 rushing yards and a touchdown also. I think he's going to have a great game day. I think it's going to be the most yards the 49ers have given up this year. I think if the Chiefs lose today, it will not be because of him. I think him and the weapons he has, receiving-wise, are going to play very well. I do think that he will have at least one very long touchdown. I think he'll probably also have about a 20-yard run. But at the same time, I think we'll get to the 49ers defense later on, but I think just by virtue of how he plays, there are going to be a couple of plays where on 3rd and 4 or 5, he's going to take a big sack. So Mahomes, I think, obviously in this game, the Chiefs have the quarterback advantage, although I don't think it's as big of a discrepancy as some people would think it is. Just because Jimmy Garoppolo has played well this season. 69% completion percentage, 27 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, almost 4,000 passing yards, 4 game-winning touchdowns. But they've limited his use in the playoffs. He only has, in 2 playoff games, he has 27 attempts. 208 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. The interception did go off all of his receivers' hands against Minnesota. And last week against the Packers, he was 6 for 8 for whatever it was, 80 yards. But, I mean, that was a choice. They wanted to just run the ball all over the Green Bay Packers. And I think if they wanted to throw the ball or in the NFC Championship, Jimmy Garoppolo could have had 300 yards passing. But as far as the quarterback comparison goes, I'm going to give it to the Chiefs just by virtue of Pat Mahomes probably being the best quarterback of all time. So it's 1 mark for the Chiefs. Moving on to the running back position. This one's a blowout. The Chiefs' only running back that's done anything of note that is active, but Shady McCoy being out for this game, is Damian Williams. For the year, he has under 500 yards, 5 touchdowns. In the playoffs this year, though he has stepped it up, he does have 92 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. He has a receiving touchdown on 7 receptions for 65 yards. He'll be a lot more effective in the passing game. I do think the Chiefs would be smart to try to run some draws early, try to get the 49ers in pursuit of the quarterback early, kind of maybe a couple screens, just try to take advantage of not only the zone defense that the 49ers like to play, but also the fact that they will be focusing on rushing the passer this week. You got to make Fred Warner, Dre Greenlaw, and Quan Alexander defend the run as well as be recognized that the fact that the Chiefs are maybe the best passing offense in the league this year. But when you get the 49ers, you go from having a team with only 1 running back to having a team that has had 4 viable running backs this year. They have 3 running backs over 500 yards rushing during the regular season. Although they've kind of locked it in these 2 playoff games, but it's been 2 vastly different playoff games. Against Minnesota, a game where they dominated. It was Tevin Coleman who had 126 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns in that game. And in that game, he had 22 rushes, 105 yards, 2 touchdowns. He got hurt after 21 yards against the Packers, hurt his collarbone. He will be active for the game for the game today, which is big in terms of how the 49ers are able to kind of stagger carries and mix up and give different looks. The big story coming into the game, Raheem Mostert, former Purdue running back, who I saw play against Marshall when he was at Purdue. Actually, if you want to get interesting with the local people here, the 49ers' two leading rushers are from Purdue and IU, so there's your Indiana connection. Mostert against the Packers, 29 rushing yards, 29 rushing attempts, 220 yards, 4 touchdowns, an incredible performance. It seemed like every time he touched the ball, he was getting 11, 10, 12 yards. It was incredible. He absolutely destroyed the Green Bay Packers. For the year, 700 yards, 8 touchdowns. And then the running backs that maybe aren't getting any attention but could factor in, Matt Breida, 600 yards during the season, 1 touchdown. The playoffs, he's been limited to nine touches for 19 yards. He is more of their power back. I think we may see Matt Breida get some touches on the goal line, along with Kyle Juszczyk, the fullback, who could get some touches on the goal line. So the running back position, I'm going to give the advantage to the San Francisco 49ers big time, because I think the 49ers offense, when maybe not as explosive as the Chiefs, is a lot more diversified because of what they can do at the running back position. The fact that they can beat you with speed with Mostert, they can beat you with receiving with Coleman, they can beat you with power with Breida. They can beat you. They have a fullback that can do whatever you need him to do. 1-1 position battle. Move on to receivers. This is probably the toughest battle because you have two teams that do a lot of different things with their receivers. When you look at the Chiefs, Tyreek Hill, Sammy Watkins, Mecole Hardman. The thing the Chiefs like to have fast receivers that they can have Pat Mahomes throw fly routes to or zip the ball to down low, and they can run with their legs, beat you for big touchdowns. And the 49ers, they're more guys that will catch the ball in the end zone, short gains, first downs. They're not going to do a whole lot after the catch. Deebo Samuel, Emmanuel Sanders, Kendrick Bourne. And then the anchor of the Chiefs and 49ers passing offense is the tight end for both teams. For the Chiefs, it's Travis Kelce, 97 yards. My bad. 97 receptions this year, 1,200 yards, 5 touchdowns. In the playoffs, he has 13 receptions, 164 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He did have a couple drops early against Houston. And for the 49ers, it's Greg Kittle, 85 receptions, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns. He only has 4 receptions for 35 yards this year. This postseason. But that's because they just went to the San Francisco game and said, we don't need to throw the ball, or the Packers game, we don't need to throw the ball to beat the Green Bay Packers. They just ran the ball down their throat and didn't really throw the ball at all. Number 1 receiver, Tyreek Hill, in this playoffs, 8 receptions, 108 yards, 2 touchdowns. Sammy Watkins has 9 receptions for 190 yards and a touchdown. Mecole Hardman only has 3 receptions for 27 yards, but his contribution is in the special teams, where he has 704 kick return yards in the playoffs with a touchdown, 104-yard touchdown. And Sammy Watkins also has the big play threat. He has a 50-yard or 60-yard receiving touchdown against the Texans. So the Chiefs are going to have a lot better playoff numbers because, once again, the 49ers just aren't throwing the ball in the playoffs. Deebo Samuel has 5 receptions for 88 yards. He's their leading receiver in the playoffs. He also has 3 rushes for 49 yards, which shows more about what Kyle Shanahan can do with all the pieces in that offense. Emmanuel Sanders has 2 receptions for 33 yards. Kendrick Bourne has 4 receptions for 46 yards. He does have the only touchdown. On Emmanuel Sanders, I think he could have a big impact in the Super Bowl because he's been there before. This is his 3rd Super Bowl of his career. He played in Super Bowl 50 with the Broncos, then he played in Super Bowl 45 with the Steelers. Super Bowl 50, he had 6 receptions for 83 yards, leading all receivers. In Super Bowl 45, his rookie season with the Steelers, he had 2 receptions for 17 yards. So this is a guy that's proven that he can go out and produce on the Super Bowl level. Something that nobody else on either of these teams' offenses has really proven to this point. Choosing between these two is going to be tough, but I do think I'm going to lean 49ers because all you really need to do against the Chiefs is just play deep coverage. Just don't let them pass you. They have a tendency to drop passes. Tyreek Hill's small. He's the fastest person alive, but he's also small. The San Francisco has a lot more diversified portfolio. They have Deebo Samuels who can catch and run. They have Emmanuel Sanders who can be that 15 to 20 range guy. And they have Kendrick Bourne who's going to kill you in the red zone. He has 5 touchdowns this year on 30 passes. So 1 out of every 6 passes he catches is a touchdown. And then Greg Kittle, just maybe the best all-around tight end in the NFL. Kelsey's probably a better receiver, but Kittle's so much better of a blocker. I think I give him that edge. So the 49ers also get the edge in the tight end category. Going to the O-line, the 49ers have the easy edge in the O-line. Mike McGlinchey, Joe Staley. They anchor that O-line. It's a very good offensive line. The Chiefs' offensive line has had troubles this year. Duvernay, Tarif, Morse, they both had troubles keeping mud off Patrick Mahomes' jersey. He's been running around like a chicken with his head cut off at times. But Pat Mahomes has been able to cover for a multitude of woes on the Kansas City offensive line because of his arm talent and what he can do with the football. I'm moving to the defensive side of the ball, where we're gonna see even more discrepancy. Defensive line, I think, is really as close as the Chiefs can get to the 49ers. Bosa, Armstead, the 49ers with Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Solomon Thomas, Dee Ford, DeForest Buckner. As a team, they had 5 sacks against Minnesota. For the year, Joey Bosa for the postseason alone, Bosa has 3 sacks. Armstead has 2 sacks. Solomon Thomas, Dee Ford, and DeForest Buckner each have 1 sack. Cornerback Daquan Williams has a sack also. So they've just been able to get to the passer, and they do it as you see with only 1 cornerback having a sack and no linebackers. They do it by rushing 4 guys, and they have a rotation of 5 guys that they can mix in to make sure that pass rush is effective at all times. That Bosa and Armstead on the outside with Dee Ford and either DeForest Buckner or Solomon Thomas rushing over the guards or the tackles it's going to be what decides this game, is how many times can the 49ers defensive line get to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chiefs will have to probably use their fullback Anthony Sherman a good amount of times to sit in the backfield as an extra blocker. They will have no chance of getting a run game going, I don't think, because Travis Kelce has nothing as a pass blocker. So you look at the Chiefs D-line. Frank Clark and Chris Jones have both had great years pass rushing. Frank Clark said they're going to shut down Derrick Henry, and they did. Chris Jones has been the mainstay of the Kansas City Chiefs defense the last couple of years. If you know anything about Super Bowls, you know that Steve Spagnuolo, the Chiefs defensive coordinator, has done a good job did a really good job the one Super Bowl he coached in putting his players in a position to hit the quarterback. He was a Giants defensive coordinator in 2007 when they beat the undefeated Patriots. So they have a coach that's been here, done this, coached well on the Super Bowl stage before. But all in all, I'm going to give the 49ers another check mark in the defensive line category just because of how deep they can go. The Chiefs really only have those 2 guys rushing on defense. We move on to linebackers. 49ers, I'm going to go ahead and give them the check mark in this one because I don't think Reggie Ragland and Anthony Hitchens are good linebackers. I think that's the weakest part of the Chiefs' defense is that middle part. They get beat in pass coverage. I think Greg Kittle and George Kittle and